My dad yelled, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything." Then my sister told me to leave if I had any pride left. So I did, quietly. A month later, my sister called in tears. Why did the tuition payment stop? I just texted back, thought I never gave this family anything. Then I watched them all fall apart. I never thought I'd be the type of person to cut off my entire family. But here we are. This story is long, messy, and honestly still hurts to think about. But I need to get it off my chest. Maybe writing it all down will help me process everything that's happened over the past 6 months. I, 28 male, live in Seattle. I make good money, around $140,000 a year, which is decent for my area but nothing crazy. I've always been what you'd call the responsible one in my family. My sister Emma is 24 and has been in college for what feels like forever, currently working on her master's degree in art therapy. My parents, well, they're complicated. Mom and dad have been married for 30 years, and dad works as a high school principal, while mom is a part-time real estate agent. They're not poor, but they're not exactly wealthy either. Dad makes around $70,000, and mom maybe brings in $30,000 on a good year. They live in the same house they bought when I was 5, and it's paid off, so their expenses aren't too crazy. The thing is, I've been quietly helping my family financially for years, and somehow they've managed to convince themselves that I'm the selfish one who never gives back. It's honestly mind-boggling how twisted their perception has become. Growing up, I was always the responsible kid. While Emma was the creative, free-spirited one who could do no wrong, I was expected to excel academically, help around the house, and basically be the perfect son. I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, and worked part-time jobs throughout high school to save for college. My parents paid for Emma's dance classes, art supplies, summer camps, and pretty much anything she wanted. Meanwhile, I had to work to buy my own car, pay for my own gas, and cover most of my college expenses through scholarships and part-time work. I never complained because I figured that's just how it was. Emma was the baby, the artistic one who needed nurturing, and I was the capable one who could handle things myself. Even back then, there was this underlying assumption that because I was good with money and responsible, I should be grateful for the opportunity to be self-sufficient. When I graduated college debt-free thanks to scholarships and working my ass off, my parents acted like it proved their parenting strategy was right. They'd raised an independent, successful son who didn't need help. What they didn't seem to understand was that I would have liked some help, some support, some acknowledgement that I was working twice as hard as my sister for half the recognition. It all started when Emma got into college. She wanted to go to this expensive private liberal arts school that cost about $45,000 a year. My parents had maybe $20,000 saved in a college fund, and even with financial aid, they were looking at covering about $30,000 annually out of pocket. That's when I stepped in. I'd been working for about 3 years by then and had managed to save up a decent amount. I offered to help with Emma's tuition, not because my parents asked, but because I wanted my sister to be able to pursue her dreams without being buried in debt. I'd seen too many friends struggle with student loans, and I didn't want that for Emma. So I started paying $15,000 every semester directly to the school. That's $30,000 a year, which meant I was covering the majority of Emma's education costs. I also helped with her living expenses occasionally, sending her $500 here and there when she needed textbooks or had some emergency. But here's the kicker. I never made a big deal about it. I didn't want Emma to feel guilty or like she owed me anything. I love my sister, and I was in a position to help, so I did. I just quietly handled the payments and never brought it up during family conversations. My parents knew I was helping, obviously, since I was sending money directly to their account to cover the tuition payments. But somehow, over the years, they started treating it like it was just expected, like I was supposed to do it because I was successful and they weren't. The requests started small. Can you help with Emma's textbooks this semester? Became, can you cover her meal plan? Which became, can you help with her study abroad program? Each time I said yes because I wanted to help Emma succeed. But it wasn't just Emma's education. When my parents' water heater died during my second year of work, I sent them $2,000 to replace it. When mom's car needed major repairs, I covered the $1,500 bill. When dad needed dental work that insurance didn't cover, I paid the $3,000 out of pocket. I helped them remodel their kitchen the summer before Emma's junior year, contributing $8,000 for new appliances and countertops. When their roof started leaking, I sent another $8,000 for repairs. When mom wanted to take a real estate continuing education course that cost $1,200, I paid for it. I was also covering smaller ongoing expenses. Mom's car insurance because she was having trouble keeping up with payments. Dad's cell phone bill because he wanted a newer phone, but couldn't afford the monthly payment. Emma's health insurance copays when she got sick. Gifts for their anniversaries, birthdays, and holidays that were way more expensive than what they bought for each other. Over the course of 5 years, I calculated that I'd probably given my family close to $200,000. And that's not counting the time I took off work to help them move furniture, fix things around their house, or drive them to appointments when their car was in the shop. Meanwhile, every family gathering became an opportunity for them to lecture me about being more involved, more giving, more present. It was insane. The comments started subtle. "It must be nice to have such a flexible job," Mom would say when I mentioned traveling for work. "Some of us can't just jet off whenever we want." "You're so lucky you don't have to worry about money," Dad would add. "Must be nice to only have to think about yourself." Emma would chime in with, "I wish I could afford to be as independent as you. Some of us actually need our family." These little digs became more frequent and more pointed over time. They'd make comments about my apartment being too fancy, my car being unnecessarily expensive, my clothes being show-offy. They criticized my choice to eat out instead of cooking, to travel instead of saving money, to live alone instead of getting roommates. The irony was that I was actually living pretty modestly for someone with my income, specifically because I was sending so much money to them. I drove a 3-year-old Honda Civic, lived in a one-bedroom apartment that was nice but not luxurious, and most of my extravagant spending was on things like decent clothes for work and occasional dinners out with friends. But somehow, in their minds, I had become this selfish person who was living lavishly while they struggled. They seemed to forget that their struggles were significantly lessened by my contributions. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner last year. We were all sitting around the table, me, my parents, Emma, and my aunt and uncle, who were visiting from Portland. The conversation somehow turned to family contributions and giving back. Dad started going on about how important it is for successful people to remember where they came from and help their families. He was looking directly at me while saying this, with this pointed expression like I was some kind of disappointment. "You know," Dad said, cutting into his ham with more force than necessary, "some people think that just because they make good money, they're better than everyone else. They forget about the sacrifices their parents made." I knew he was talking about me, but I tried to stay calm. "I think most people appreciate their parents' sacrifices, Dad." "Do they, though?" Mom chimed in. "Because sometimes it feels like certain people only show up when it's convenient for them." Emma nodded along. "Yeah, it's like some people just take and take but never give anything back." I sat there staring at them, wondering if they'd all lost their minds. I'd been paying for Emma's education for 3 years at that point. I'd helped my parents with their roof repair the previous summer, sending them $8,000 when they couldn't afford it. I'd bought Dad a new laptop when his old one died, and I'd been covering Mom's car insurance for the past year because she was having trouble with her real estate income. But apparently, none of that counted. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here," I said carefully. "I feel like I do try to help when I can." Dad laughed. Actually laughed. "Help? Like what? Coming to dinner a few times a year? That's not help. That's basic family obligation." "I mean financially," I said. "I've been helping with various expenses." "Oh, please," Emma rolled her eyes. "You bought Dad a laptop once? That's not exactly life-changing support." I looked around the table and everyone was staring at me like I was delusional. My aunt and uncle looked uncomfortable, but they didn't say anything. That's when it hit me. My parents had never told Emma that I was paying for her school. She had no idea. And apparently, my parents had convinced themselves that the money I'd been sending was insignificant. "I think you might be forgetting some things," I said slowly. Dad's face got red. "Forgetting what?" "The fact that you make more money than the rest of us combined, but still expect us to pay for dinner every time we go out? The fact that you've never once offered to help with any real family expenses?" "Real family expenses?" I repeated. "Like Emma's education," Mom said. "Do you have any idea how much we've sacrificed to send her to school? How much debt we've taken on? Meanwhile, you're living in your fancy apartment, driving your nice car, taking vacations, and you've never once offered to help." I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. These people were completely detached from reality. "Mom, I literally pay Emma's tuition." "What?" Emma looked confused. "You pay a tiny portion," Dad said dismissively. "Like what? A couple thousand here and there? That's nothing compared to what we're covering." "Dad, I pay $30,000 a year for Emma's school." The table went completely silent. Emma's fork clanked against her plate. "What are you talking about?" Emma asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her my bank statements. "I've been paying $15,000 every semester directly to your school for the past 3 years. That's $90,000 total." Emma's face went white. She looked at our parents. Is this true? Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Well, yes, he helps some, Mom said quickly. But that doesn't change the fact that… Some, I interrupted. I'm paying for the majority of her education. But you never told me, Emma said, looking between our parents and me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because we didn't want you to feel obligated to him, Dad said. We wanted you to focus on your studies, not worry about money. So you let me think Mom and Dad were struggling to afford my school while my brother was just being selfish? You are being selfish, Dad snapped at me. You make it sound like you're doing us some huge favor. You're successful because of the foundation we gave you, because of the values we instilled in you. The least you can do is help your family. The least I can do? I've been paying $30,000 a year for Emma's school, plus helping with your roof, your car insurance, various emergencies. What more do you want? We want you to act like you're part of this family instead of treating us like charity cases, Mom said. Charity cases? I've been quietly helping for years, and you're sitting here telling me I never give anything. Because you don't! Dad slammed his hand on the table. All you do is take. You come here, eat our food, expect us to entertain you, act like you're doing us a favor by showing up. You've never given this family anything that matters. That's when Emma stood up. You know what? If you're so unhappy with how we treat you, maybe you should just leave. If you had any pride left, you wouldn't sit here and lecture us about money like we owe you something. I looked around the table one more time. My aunt and uncle were staring at their plates. My parents were glaring at me like I was the worst person in the world. Emma was standing there with her arms crossed, waiting for me to defend myself. But I was done. I was so incredibly done. I stood up quietly, grabbed my coat, and walked to the door. Where are you going? Mom called after me. Home, I said without turning around. Oh, come on, Dad yelled. Don't be so dramatic. Sit down and finish dinner. I kept walking. This is exactly what we're talking about, Emma shouted after me. You can't handle any criticism, so you just run away like a child. I stopped at the door and turned around. You're right, Emma. I can't handle being told I've never given this family anything while I pay for your education. I can't handle being called selfish while I support everyone financially. And I can't handle being told I don't matter to this family while simultaneously being expected to fund it. So yeah, I'm leaving. Don't you dare try to guilt us with your money. Dad stood up from the table. We never asked you for anything. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're right. You never asked. You just expected. There's a difference. That was December 23rd. I drove back to Seattle that night and spent Christmas alone in my apartment, eating Chinese takeout and watching Netflix. It was honestly one of the most peaceful Christmases I'd had in years. For the first week, I didn't hear anything from my family. I figured they were probably talking about how immature I was, how I'd proven their point about being selfish by storming out of dinner. Then my phone started ringing. First Mom, then Dad, then Emma. I let all the calls go to voicemail. The messages started off annoyed, then became concerned, then angry again. You're really going to ignore your family over a little disagreement? Dad's voicemail from New Year's Eve said, this is exactly the kind of selfish behavior we were talking about. Mom left tearful messages about how I was breaking up the family over pride. Emma sent texts ranging from angry to pleading to dismissive. I didn't respond to any of them. 2 weeks after Christmas, I got a text from Emma. Are you seriously going to ignore me forever over some stupid fight? I'm sorry if we hurt your feelings, but this is ridiculous. I almost responded to that one. Almost. But then I remembered her standing there telling me to leave if I had any pride left, and I put my phone away. Here's the thing. I wasn't trying to punish them or teach them a lesson. I was just done. I was emotionally exhausted from years of being treated like the family disappointment, while simultaneously being their primary source of financial support. I needed space to figure out what I wanted my relationship with them to look like going forward. But while I was taking that space, I also made some practical decisions. I canceled the automatic transfer that sent money to my parents' account for Emma's tuition. I removed my parents from my car insurance policy that I'd been paying for. I called my dad's phone company and removed my payment information from his account. I stopped sending the monthly $800 I'd been contributing to my parents' mortgage payments that I'd been helping with for 2 years. I wasn't doing it to be petty. I was doing it because their behavior at Christmas had made it clear that they didn't value my contributions, so I figured they didn't want them. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. The first week of February, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Emma, calling from her dorm phone because I'd blocked her cell. Why did the tuition payment for this semester not go through? She asked without preamble. Because I stopped paying it. What? Why? I thought I never gave this family anything. There was a long silence. That's not what we meant. What did you mean then? We meant like emotionally, being present, participating in family events. I see. So my money is appreciated, but my presence isn't? That's not what I'm saying. Emma, at Christmas dinner, Dad literally screamed that I've never given this family anything that matters. You told me to leave if I had any pride left. So I left. And I stopped giving you things that apparently don't matter. But I need that money for school. Then maybe you should ask the parents who've been taking credit for paying your tuition while I actually paid it. They can't afford it. You know they can't afford it. That's not my problem anymore. I hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone was ringing again. This time it was Mom. You cannot seriously be cutting off your sister's education over a family argument. I'm not cutting off anything. I'm just no longer paying for something that apparently doesn't count as giving back to the family. That's not what we meant, and you know it. What did you mean then, Mom? We meant that money isn't everything. We wanted you to be more involved in our lives, not just send checks. So let me get this straight. You wanted me to be more involved emotionally while continuing to send checks? We wanted you to understand that family is about more than money. You're right. Family is about more than money. It's about respect, appreciation, and not screaming at someone that they never give anything while they're literally paying for your daughter's education. We were frustrated. You never seemed to care about spending time with us. I came to every family dinner I was invited to. I called regularly. I participated in family events. But somehow that wasn't enough, and I was still the selfish one who takes and never gives. You could have been more present. More present how? I live 3 hours away. I have a job. I came home for every holiday, most birthdays, and whenever you asked me to visit, it never felt like you wanted to be there. And there it was. The real issue. I didn't perform happiness and gratitude well enough while being financially exploited. You're right, I said. I didn't want to be there. It's hard to enjoy family time when you're constantly being criticized and told you're not good enough, even while you're supporting everyone financially. We never meant to make you feel that way. But you did, for years. And when I tried to point out that I actually do contribute to this family, Dad screamed at me, and Emma told me to leave. So I left. Please, Mom's voice cracked. We can't afford Emma's tuition without your help. She'll have to drop out. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent years telling me I don't contribute anything meaningful to this family. I hung up again. The calls kept coming. Emma, Mom, Dad, even my aunt and uncle from Portland. Everyone wanted to explain to me why I was wrong for cutting off financial support. Nobody wanted to discuss why it was okay for them to scream at me that I never give anything while I was actively supporting them. Dad left me a voicemail that was particularly enlightening. I don't understand why you're being so vindictive. We raised you to be better than this. Yes, maybe we didn't acknowledge your financial help enough, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy your sister's future out of spite. It was amazing. Even in his apology, he was telling me that I was wrong and bad. He acknowledged that they didn't acknowledge my financial help enough, but still characterized my decision to stop paying as vindictive and spiteful. My aunt called with a guilt trip about family loyalty. My uncle tried to broker a compromise where I'd pay half the tuition. Emma sent me articles about the importance of forgiveness and family bonds. Everyone had an opinion about what I should do. Nobody seemed interested in examining why I'd reached this point. 3 weeks after Emma's first call, I got a text from her. My school is threatening to drop me if the tuition isn't paid by Friday. Please, I'm begging you. I'll graduate this year if I can just finish this semester. I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me wanted to pay it. I love my sister, and I didn't want to see her dreams derailed. But I also knew that if I gave in now, nothing would change. I'd go back to being the family ATM who gets criticized for not being grateful enough for the privilege. I texted back, "Have you asked Mom and Dad to take out a loan? They can't qualify for any more loans. They're already maxed out." Yeah, what about financial aid from the school? It's too late in the semester. What about a payment plan? They want the full amount. I'm sorry, Emma. I can't help you. Can't or won't? Won't. I won't continue to financially support people who think I've never given them anything meaningful. She didn't respond. Friday came and went. The following Monday, I got a call from Dad. Are you happy now? He asked without preamble. Emma had to withdraw from school. Her entire semester is lost. She'll have to reapply next year and start over. Are you satisfied? No, I'm not happy about it. I'm sorry Emma is going through this. Sorry enough to fix it? Sorry enough to feel bad that it happened. Not sorry enough to resume paying for her school while being treated like garbage by my family. We never treated you like garbage. Dad, at Christmas dinner, you screamed at me that I've never given this family anything. I had been paying $30,000 a year for Emma's education for 3 years. Est you? We were talking about emotional support. Were you? Because when I pointed out that I do provide financial support, you called it insignificant. You said I pay a tiny portion and a couple thousand here and there. You minimized my contributions while simultaneously relying on them. We didn't mean to minimize. Yes, you did. Because if you acknowledged how much I was actually contributing, you couldn't maintain the narrative that I'm the selfish son who takes and never gives. That's not. We don't think you're selfish. Really? Because I have about 20 voicemails and texts from the past 3 months telling me how selfish, vindictive, and spiteful I am. He was quiet for a moment. We were upset. And when you're upset, your true feelings come out. You think I owe you financial support because you raised me. You think I should be grateful for the opportunity to pay for things while being criticized for not doing enough. You want my money, but not my boundaries. We want our son back. Your son is right here. The problem is you only value the part of your son that writes checks. That's not true. Prove it. How? Figure out how to pay for Emma's education without my help. Show me that you can value our relationship even when I'm not financially supporting you. If you can do that, maybe we can rebuild something real. He hung up. Over the next few months, I heard updates through my aunt and uncle, who had started reaching out to check on me after the whole family drama exploded. Emma moved back home and got a job at a local coffee shop. My parents took out a second mortgage on their house to try to cover her tuition for the following year. Dad picked up extra work coaching summer school programs. Mom started working full-time in real estate again. Everyone was struggling financially. And according to my aunt, everyone was angry at me for putting them in this position. It was fascinating how they'd managed to make this my fault. I hadn't put them in any position. I'd simply stopped putting myself in the position of being their unacknowledged benefactor. The guilt trips continued for months. Extended family members would call to tell me how disappointed they were in my behavior. Family friends would reach out to say they'd heard about the situation and hoped I'd reconsider. Everyone seemed to think that because I had money, and they didn't, I was obligated to share it regardless of how I was treated. But something interesting happened during those months of silence. I started to heal. Without the constant financial drain of supporting my family, I'd been able to save money for the first time in years. I was less stressed, sleeping better, and generally happier. I'd also started therapy to work through the years of family dysfunction, and it was helping me understand how messed up the dynamic had been. My therapist helped me see that my family had been financially exploiting me while using emotional manipulation to make me feel guilty about setting boundaries. They've trained you to believe that your worth to the family is based on what you can provide, she said during one session. And when you tried to assert that you had value beyond money, they punished you for it. She was right. I'd been conditioned to believe that love was something I had to earn through financial contributions and that asking for basic respect was selfish. In June, Emma sent me a long email. It was actually thoughtful and seemed genuine. I've been thinking a lot about what happened at Christmas and afterward. I'm starting to understand why you were so hurt. I had no idea you were paying for my school, and I'm realizing now how awful it must have felt to have us tell you that you never give anything while you were literally paying for my education. I'm also starting to see how Mom and Dad's attitude about your help was messed up. They always talked about your money like it was just expected, like you owed it to us. They never talked about it like it was a generous gift or sacrifice on your part. I know I screwed up at Christmas. I was parroting what I'd always heard from them about you being distant and selfish, but I didn't have the full picture. I didn't know you were quietly supporting our family in so many ways. Working at the coffee shop has been humbling. I'm making $12 an hour and barely covering my basic expenses. It's made me realize how much money you must have been sending to help with my school and other things. I never appreciated it because I never knew about most of it. I miss you. I know you're angry and I understand why. But I hope we can work things out eventually. I love you, and I'm sorry. I cried reading that email. It was the first time anyone in my family had actually acknowledged my perspective or validated my feelings. I wrote back, "Thank you for this email. It means a lot that you took the time to really think about what happened and see it from my side. I love you too, and I miss you. I'm not ready to go back to how things were, but I'm open to building something new if we can do it based on honesty and mutual respect instead of obligation and expectation." Emma and I started texting occasionally after that. Nothing heavy, just checking in on each other. She told me about her job and her plans to reapply for school. I told her about work and the trip I was planning to Japan. My parents, on the other hand, doubled down on their narrative that I was punishing them unfairly. In August, Mom left me a voicemail. I don't understand how you can just abandon your family like this. We made mistakes, but what you're doing is so much worse. Emma's working at a coffee shop instead of finishing her degree. Dad is exhausted from working extra jobs. I'm working 60 hours a week trying to catch up on bills, all because you decided to throw a tantrum over one dinner conversation. The lack of self-awareness was breathtaking. Even 8 months later, she was still characterizing their behavior as mistakes, and mine as throwing a tantrum. She still couldn't see that they'd created this situation by taking my contributions for granted, while simultaneously telling me I was selfish. In September, I got a call from my uncle in Portland. "Your dad asked me to reach out," he said. "The family is struggling pretty hard financially. Emma had to defer school again because they can't come up with the money. Your mom is talking about selling the house. I'm sorry to hear they're struggling." "Are you?" "Because you could fix this. I could resume enabling a dysfunctional dynamic, yes. Don't you think you've made your point?" "What point do you think I was trying to make? That you want more appreciation for your financial help." "Uncle Rick, I wasn't trying to make a point. I was protecting myself from a toxic relationship dynamic. They're family. So am I. And family shouldn't scream at you that you never give anything while you're actively supporting them financially." They were frustrated. So was I. The difference is I handled my frustration by removing myself from the situation instead of verbally attacking people who were helping me. But now everyone is suffering. Everyone was already suffering. I was suffering from being financially exploited and emotionally abused. The only difference now is that the suffering is more evenly distributed. He sighed. "What would it take for you to help again? A genuine apology that acknowledges what they did wrong. A commitment to changing how they treat me. And a sustainable plan for Emma's education that doesn't rely entirely on my charity." "What kind of apology?" "One that acknowledges they took my financial help for granted, minimized my contributions, verbally attacked me when I tried to defend myself, and then blamed me for the consequences of their own behavior." That's pretty specific. Because anything less specific will just be a non-apology designed to get my money flowing again without actually addressing the problem. We talked for another hour, and by the end, I think he was starting to understand my perspective. He'd always seen me as the successful one who should help the family, but he'd never really thought about what it felt like to be in my position. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Dad. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one. I've been thinking about what happened at Christmas, and I realize how awful we were to you. You've been supporting Emma's education for years, helping us with expenses, quietly taking care of the family, and instead of being grateful, we criticized you for not doing enough." I was shocked. This was not what I'd expected. "I think we got so used to your help that we started taking it for granted," he continued. "And when you tried to point out everything you were doing, we got defensive instead of listening. We were wrong. We were completely wrong. Thank you for saying that. Emma told me she's been talking to you some, and that means a lot. I know I screwed things up badly, but I hope we can work toward fixing them." "I hope so too. I don't expect you to start helping financially again. I know we lost the right to that support when we took it for granted, but I hope maybe we can rebuild our relationship as a family." We talked for another hour. It wasn't perfect, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but it felt like the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Emma ended up taking out student loans to finish her degree. My parents refinanced their house to help her with expenses. It wasn't easy for them, but they made it work, and Emma graduated this past May with her master's degree. I went to her graduation. It was the first time I'd seen my parents in almost 2 years. Things were awkward, but not hostile. We're all working on rebuilding our relationships slowly. I still haven't resumed financial support, and I probably won't anytime soon. That dynamic was too unhealthy for too long. But we're building something better, a relationship based on respect and choice rather than obligation and expectation. Emma got a job as an art therapist at a children's hospital, and she loves it. My parents are still financially stressed, but they're managing. And I'm learning what it feels like to have a family that values me for who I am, not what I can provide. It took almost destroying our family for us to build something real, but sometimes that's what it takes.